In this fortnight's episode, was Jesus a socialist or a libertarian? What's in the news with stories on the FBI using StingRay devices, jury nullification bills, and testing welfare recipients for drugs, and yet another bad cop segment.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week, coming to you from the state that its delegates received the honor of being the first to vote for the Declaration of Independence on July the 4th, 1776. This is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Revolution needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at The Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 26, the last episode of 2015, the Politics of Jesus edition. And it's Tuesday, December 22nd, 2015. When we've already had more than 1,103 people killed by police this year. What's rustling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. Was Jesus a socialist, a libertarian, or something entirely different? In this segment, I will take that topic on because primarily I'm just curious, and this is going to force me to do the research to find out for sure. Now, as an atheist, I don't apply any divinity to Jesus Christ at all, nor do I believe in any God. I also believe there is no evidence that Jesus Christ ever even existed as a person. There is no historical evidence of it at all, no proof in any way outside of the Bible. So, with this being the case, when I mentioned to my mother, a devout Christian, that I planned to do my next episode on this topic, her question to me was, how can you do that if you don't even believe that he existed? Of course, the answer to this question is pretty simple. I could do the same exercise on Harry Potter or Santa Claus. There are tons of posts on the internet about the politics of Star Wars or Star Trek. We could talk about, does the Tooth Fairy enforce savings versus consuming? So just because I do not personally subscribe to the idea that Jesus Christ was some sort of Messiah, or even that he existed, this does not mean that we can't take the legend of Jesus Christ and come to an understanding of whether this person, according to that legend, was a socialist or a libertarian. So let's start with the dreaded word socialism. What exactly is socialism? And I know that a lot of people don't know what socialism is because that word is thrown around an awful lot. According to Merriam-Webster, socialism is a way of organizing a society in which major industries are owned and controlled by the government rather than by individual people and companies. Now, there weren't a whole lot of major industries back in the days of Jesus, but the government of his time, the Roman Empire, still did control many things. Now, how did Jesus feel about this? Many people point to Jesus saying in Matthew 22, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." Now, this does sound a bit socialist at first glance. Jesus is telling the Pharisees that Caesar owns the money. Therefore, he has the power to demand anything that he wishes to be done with that money, including taxation. However, if you dig just a little bit deeper into this, you see that it appears Jesus is actually endorsing property rights. Caesar does own the money. He has the authority to decide what to do with it. This is one major issue with a government-controlled monetary system, and one reason I'm such a big proponent of Bitcoin and other alternate monetary systems, to keep the government out of it. Now, many socialists, including Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders, believe that because Christ had a love for fellow men and called for people to sell their possessions and give the money to the poor, that he was somehow a socialist. But where in the definition of socialism does it say anything about that? It doesn't. They say that public assistance programs such as welfare, Medicare, and Social Security are a following of Jesus' teachings. To put it bluntly, this is utter horseshit. Nowhere in the Bible, not once, Does Jesus advocate using the force of government or the force of anyone to take your possessions and give them to the poor? He advocated you doing it yourself, voluntarily, to show your love of your fellow man. Now, personally, I don't see selling all of your possessions and giving the money to someone else as very noble. How can you take care of others if you make yourself poor and destitute? What is solved by a man with means becoming poor to help a poor man have means? Nothing. But even if you do this, it is not socialism in any way, at least by the definition of socialism. This is also shown in the story of Lazarus and the rich man in Luke 16. When both men die, the rich man goes to hell, and Lazarus, the poor man, goes to heaven. However, the rich man's sin was not being rich. It was that he ignored the suffering of his fellow man. To further prove this, in Luke 14, Jesus says, "When you have a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed." How could a poor man put on such a feast for so many people? He couldn't. Only a wealthy man could do that in those days. So again, it is not a sin to be rich or to be of means, but it is a sin, according to the Bible, to ignore the suffering of others when you can help. As a former minister, I spent years reading the Bible. I've read the Bible cover to cover, 3 or 4 times. And never once did I find anything in the Bible that made me believe that Jesus was some sort of a socialist. But was he a libertarian? Now, socialism is not necessarily the opposite of libertarianism, but it's close enough for our purposes here. Many point to the parable of the rich fool in Luke 12 as Jesus condemning capitalism and self-interest. But it's not even close. Jesus does say, yes, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Isn't this parable condemning a man for being rich? Of course not. It's pointing to the fact that he allowed his riches to interfere with him following God. These are not necessarily mutually exclusive things. It's just as possible for rich people to follow God as it is for poor men. But according to Jesus, letting your riches, or anything else for that matter, interfere with your relationship with God is a no-no. Paul, Jesus' voice on earth after Jesus left, said, "The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat." This certainly lends credence to the thought that Jesus was a bit of a libertarian. As libertarians, we fully believe in giving our fellow man a hand up if we're able. But that does not mean supporting someone who is capable of supporting themselves yet refuses. Christ was also very anti-authoritarian, or at least it seemed, when it came to earthly authority. Firstly, the Bible claims that tax collectors are sinners. In Matthew 9, Jesus said that he was called to bring all sinners to repentance when he was asked by the Pharisees why he was eating with tax collectors. Jesus also made the case in Mark 10 that earthly rulers are not true rulers, saying, "You know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant." As I said, Jesus was anti-authoritarian when it came to earthly authority, but he was not so anti-authoritarian when it came to heavenly authority. But that is a topic that is outside the scope of this segment. So was Jesus, according to legend, a libertarian or a socialist? I really don't think that he was either. I also don't think he was a conservative, or a liberal, or a communist, or a fascist. And even though I've now spent several minutes talking about this, I don't think it really matters. Jesus, God, the Bible, all have some good things to say. They also have some pretty horrible things to say as well. If you're getting all of your morality from these sources, I personally question your morality. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In No Shit Sherlock news, the FBI has admitted to using StingRay devices and zero-day exploits to catch suspected criminals. StingRay devices are the devices that mimic cell phone towers to elicit signals from cell phones in an area, including from innocent bystanders. Zero-day exploits are attack code or malware that exploits vulnerabilities that remain unpatched, and in most cases are unknown by even the company or organization that designed the product. This is the first time that an agency has revealed that these devices are actually being used, although speculation and evidence have shown that they've been in use for years. The admission came in a profile published Tuesday of Amy Hess, the FBI's Executive Assistant Director for Science and Technology, who oversees the Bureau's Operational Technology Division. This is clearly highly problematic from a personal security standpoint. StingRay devices cannot be targeted to specific devices for suspected criminals. StingRay devices co-opt the signal of all cell phones in the area, including many bystanders that happen to be in the area, innocent bystanders. This is clearly unconstitutional. The use of zero-day exploits is also controversial. There is no way the FBI is finding these vulnerabilities themselves. They are buying these zero-day exploits on the black market for large sums of money, incentivizing black hat hackers to keep the vulnerabilities secret instead of releasing the information so the patch can be fixed. It also incentivizes the FBI to keep the vulnerabilities secret as long as possible so they can get their money's worth. This is not good for the public in any way. In non-prodigal son news, McKay Coppins, a BuzzFeed reporter and the author of The Wilderness, said he uncovered a tragic fracture between former Republican Senator Ron Paul of Texas and his son, GOP presidential hopeful, and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Coppins said last Wednesday on the Glenn Beck program that Ron Paul has never seemed fully on board with his son's political aspirations, from his senatorial run to his current 2016 bid for the GOP nomination. In fact, Coppins described Ron Paul's attitude towards his son as antagonistic. Coppins added that he was told that Ron Paul in 2012 had decided not to run for president. Then, in order to pass the Libertarian torch, much of the elder Paul's team moved their sights to Rand Paul, hoping that the then junior senator would launch a 2012 campaign. Quote, Rand is really into the idea. They start laying the groundwork, creating buzz, and then as soon as Ron sees that Rand is interested and that he's getting buzz, he actually calls up his advisors and says, actually, I changed my mind. I do want to run, Coppins said. According to Coppins, it was Ron Paul who derailed Rand Paul's 2012 campaign for president, characterizing the move as remarkable. Coppins told Stu Bergery, who was filling in for Glenn Beck, that Ron Paul and other libertarian purists take every opportunity that they can to undermine the 2016 presidential aspirant. Quote, they believe he is not pure enough in his libertarian beliefs, Coppins concluded. Now, this is pretty damning, if it's true. Many libertarians support Rand primarily because he's Ron's son. They believe that the apple could not have fallen far from the tree. They say that Rand's statist attitude towards many things is only a cover to help him look more mainstream. And if he's elected, then we're going to see the true Ron Paul Jr. Of course, if you listen to this show, you know how I feel about that nonsense. Rand Paul is no libertarian. Now, he does lean libertarian on some issues, sure, but so does Barack Obama. Rand Paul is a statist, pure and simple. If you care to hear more about my thoughts on Rand, you can listen to episode 9 of this show, the Riff Raff and Rand Paul edition, at thelavaflow.com/9. I'm not sure what to think of this new revelation, but Reason Magazine reported back in August that Ron Paul wrote a letter to Rand Paul supporters saying, quote, there is not one candidate who has run for president in my lifetime who can say they fully share my commitment to liberty, Austrian economics, small government, and following the Constitution more than my son Rand Paul. That's why I have wholeheartedly endorsed him. I know the media likes to play this little game where they pit us or certain views against each other. Don't fall for it. They're trying to manufacture storylines at liberty's expense. You've spent years seeing how the media treated me. They aren't my friends, and they aren't yours. So who's right? I don't know. But Ron Paul's support of Rand in no way makes me want to support Rand. As I said, Rand is a statist, and I don't support statists for any office. Ron has endorsed questionable candidates in the past and other races, and it would be very strange indeed for him not to endorse his own son. So his endorsement really makes no difference to me. In Nullify All of It news, 2 bills pre-filed in the New Hampshire State House for 2016 would require state courts to fully inform jurors of their rights to nullify. House Bill 1270 and House Bill 1333 would require courts to, quote, provide jurors with information regarding the authority of the position of juror. HB 1270 would require state courts to instruct jurors as follows, quote, the test you must use is this. If you have a reasonable doubt as to whether the state has proved any one or more of the elements of the crime charged, you must find the defendant not guilty. If you find that the law does not apply to the proven facts of the case, you must find the defendant not guilty. However, if you find that the state has proved all of the elements of the offenses charged beyond a reasonable doubt, but you find that, based upon the facts of this case, a guilty verdict will yield an unjust result, you may find the defendant not guilty. HB 133 goes even further, requiring courts to actually explain what jury nullification is and the history of jury nullification being used in the fugitive slave laws. It would require, quote, until the 1800s, judges told the jurors of their rights to refuse to enforce any law. When jurors refused to enforce the 1850 fugitive slave law, judges dismissed them. Today, judges dismiss anyone who believes people own and have the right to manage their own bodies. Corrupt politicians keep making slavery laws that take away your right to own and manage your body. Judges and lawyers complain that jurors undermine the rule of law and the uniformity of justice when jurors veto bad laws. Jurors always have the right to refuse to enforce bad laws. Police, prosecutors, and judges all use personal discretion about any law, charges, and sentencing. Jurors have exactly the same power of personal discretion about any law. If the law violates any human right, you must vote no against that law by voting not guilty. You cannot be punished for your verdict, and no one can make you give a reason. Government teachers won't teach you this in school, but a jury has more authority than Congress, the President, or even the Supreme Court. Judges say the law is for them to decide. That is not true. When you are a juror, you have the right to decide both law and fact. American jurors have a proud tradition of saying no and not guilty when bad and corrupt laws are used against people. You can protect yourself and friends and family by refusing to enforce bad laws. In our system of checks and balances, you, the juror, are the final judge of the law and justice. Yes, I know that was long, and I apologize for reading all of it, but I really feel that this is very important. If more courts were forced to read instructions like these to juries, that would go a long way towards ending the drug war, stopping convictions for victimless crimes, etc. I sure hope this one passes. In more jury nullification news, a Michigan man is facing a 5-year felony charge for passing out jury nullification flyers in front of a courthouse. The prosecutor in the case claims the pamphlets that Keith Wood passed out could create a lawless nation. Well, hell, if I'd known we could bring about anarchy in our lifetimes by just passing out a few flyers, I would have been doing that years ago. Quote, this fully informed jury association pamphlet just says ignore the law, ignore the facts, do what your conscience wants, said the prosecutor after he tossed the pamphlet on the table. Quote, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, well, we could have the jury who thinks that jihad is righteous, and if the San Bernardino shooters had not been killed, they'll say, let's acquit. Typical scare tactics. But Wood's attorney said that Wood was not targeting jurors when passing out pamphlets that have general legal information. He said that these charges violate free speech. Quote, our defense is a First Amendment defense. Our client had the right of free speech to hand out this pamphlet with legal information, said Coleman. There's nothing in this juror pamphlet that says anything about any case going on before the court. It's general information put out by an organization that it was not even put out by my client. This case has been postponed until January the 8th. And in even more jury nullification news, Liberty activist and Free State Project member James Cleveland was found not guilty on one count and had a hung jury on a second count in court this past week. James Cleveland was found not guilty of resisting arrest, and 6 of 12 jurors voted not guilty on a disorderly conduct charge. The interesting thing about this case is that James Cleveland's attorney actually used jury nullification as an argument in this case, and it seems to have worked. This should be happening in all 50 states around the country, defense attorneys using jury nullification. But it's not. But it is happening in New Hampshire. Every day that I'm here, I'm given another reminder why moving to New Hampshire was the best choice I could have ever made for me and my family. And it's not only the government spying news. Facebook has a new little-known software that monitors your profile chat and pictures for criminal activity. The software will proceed to alert an employee at the company who will then decide whether to call authorities on you or not. Facebook software focuses on conversations between members who have a loose relationship on the social network. For example, if 2 users aren't friends or only recently became friends, have no mutual friends, interact with each other very little, have a significant age difference, and or are located far from each other, the tool pays particular attention. Now, this is just scary and is yet another reason why we should all stop using Facebook Messenger for communications. Way back in episode 9 again of this show, which you can listen to at thelavaflow.com/9, I talked about a very secure encrypted messenger named Signal by Open Whisper Systems. Not only do I recommend this software, but so does Edward Snowden, and he knows what the hell he's talking about. Signal is available for iPhone or Android, so get it today and start using it. And I didn't expect this news. According to research done in 7 states, testing welfare recipients for drugs actually costs twice as much money as it saves. Quoted here from Think Progress. According to state data gathered by Think Progress, the 7 states with existing programs, Arizona, Kansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Utah, are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to ferret out very few drug users. The statistics show that applicants actually test positive at a lower rate than the drug use of the general population. The national drug use rate is 9.4%. In these states, however, the rate of positive drug tests to total welfare applicants ranges from 0.002% to 8.3%, but all except one have a rate below 1%. Meanwhile, they've collectively spent nearly $1 million on the effort. Now, this is fascinating data here. I did not expect to see this result at all. According to this data, Arizona, for example, tested 142,424 welfare applicants. Out of this over 140,000 tests, 3 people tested positive for drugs. 3. Missouri tested almost 40,000 people and had 48 positive tests. Tennessee tested over 16,000 people with 37 positive tests. Does this continue to make sense to anybody out there? It certainly doesn't to me. In Life in New Hampshire really is like this news, I am now, quote, legal to drive in this state. When we left Arkansas, we sold our old van and replaced it with a cheap car that we paid cash for just to get me back and forth from work. I had to get it licensed with the state, which, at least compared to going to the Arkansas Revenue Department, was pretty painless. It did cost me a little bit more than it would have in Arkansas, but not terribly so. The next day, I had to go to the DMV and get my driver's license. I've had driver's licenses in 2 states before New Hampshire in my life, and both states just sucked at it. However, in New Hampshire, the DMV that I went to was by far the most efficient that I've ever experienced. It was incredible. I was in and out in no time, even though there were a large number of people there before me. It ran efficiently like a fast food restaurant. Maybe I was just lucky with the DMV that I chose, but as far as government goes, it was still pretty good. One of the best parts of the DMV process were the questions on the form. I had the option to, quote, have my social security number removed from DMV records pursuant to RSA 263:40-A. Scrub my social security number from DMV records completely? Yes, please. I also had the option to have my photograph removed completely from the records of the Department of Safety pursuant to RSA 260:14. For someone who is a very private person and doesn't want the government in my life, these were very nice to see. The only caveat is that if I lose my license or have to go back for a renewal, I will have to show 2 forms of ID again since they can't verify me by my picture. This is a small price to pay for some privacy. And then I also needed to get insurance on my car, so we decided to go ahead and insure both of our cars in New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is one of only 2 states that do not require car insurance to be purchased. Since there is no mandate, this has significantly reduced the price of car insurance in the state. In Arkansas, we were insuring both of our cars. The cost was about $220 a month. Moving to New Hampshire, where one car is exactly the same and the other car is almost the exact same value as our old car that we sold in Arkansas, our car insurance is only about $80 a month. Talk about significant. This more than makes up for the additional cost of licensing the car here and having to do a vehicle inspection, which we do not have to do in Arkansas. A savings of $140 a month paid for both the additional licensing and inspection, and now I get to save $140 for the next 11 months, which is just money in my pocket. Win-win. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
Whoop! This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens.
I haven't visited this segment in a while. Not due to the lack of available topics, but frankly because of the deluge of topics that I could put in here. There are so many stories every day about some cop using his badge to coerce others illegally and immorally. However, a listener of this show, Greg, sent me a video of a cop killing a man that was so egregious that I had to dust the cobwebs off this segment and discuss this one. To see how truly egregious this act was, you really have to watch the video of this interaction. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, and I've watched hundreds of these types of videos online. Let me set the scene for you. Officer Patrick Feaster saw a vehicle leave a bar parking lot without headlights turned on and in the early morning hours of Thanksgiving. The officer followed the vehicle and watched it run a red light, strike the median, and flip the vehicle, ejecting a lady from the passenger side of the vehicle. The passenger was 23-year-old Darian Ahorn, wife of the driver, 26-year-old Andrew Thomas. The vehicle is laying on its side in the middle of the road when the patrol car comes up to it, and it's clearly visible in the dash cam of the patrol car. The officer stops his car, gets out, and saunters up to the vehicle on its side. As he's walking up, the driver, Thomas, tries to get out of the vehicle, presumably to search for his wife. While both of his hands are completely visible on top of the car where he's pushing himself out of the vehicle, the officer pulls out his gun and without even a moment of hesitation, shoots Thomas twice. Thomas falls back inside the vehicle. There is no clear reason why Officer Feaster shot Thomas. In any situation where a police officer discharges his weapon, the officers are required to notify dispatch of shots fired. Not only did Officer Feaster not notify dispatch, but he didn't mention it to the other officers when backup arrived on the scene. He didn't notify medics or firefighters that he shot Thomas. He didn't notify his supervisor when he arrived either. He only mentioned his weapon discharge to a supervisor after the gunshot wounds were found in Thomas nearly 11 minutes later. Now get this shit. Butte County District Attorney Mike Ramsey said the evidence in this case shows the shooting to be accidental and possibly negligent, but not criminally so. Quote, this shooting is not justified, but also not criminal. In other words, we, the government, investigated ourselves and found that we did nothing wrong. There will be absolutely no charges filed against Officer Feaster. What do you think would happen to you if you, a private citizen, did what Officer Feaster did? You would rot in jail, as you should. So how does this man's badge and costume give him the right to shoot a man like this and suffer no consequences? This makes me sick to my stomach. Thomas was shot in the C7 and T1 vertebrae and is currently paralyzed, possibly for life. His wife was killed when she was ejected from the vehicle. Thomas had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.15, legally drunk, so he will be facing DUI and vehicular manslaughter charges. And before you say he got what he deserved for drunk driving, I don't recall any law saying being shot and paralyzed was the sentence for driving drunk. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite Christmas present, Jessica, for her help with the show, and Sheltered Life for allowing me to use their music. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/26. I don't have any iTunes reviews this week. Boo! But thank you to all of you who have left reviews. It is so much appreciated. If you want to leave a review, which I will read on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/iTunes. And if you like what this show gives you, and you want more of it, and to keep this show ad-free, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. There are monthly costs associated with doing this show, and I need additional equipment to continue making this show better for you every episode. I'm sitting pretty at 36%, more than 1/3 of the way towards bringing you more content. Help me get closer to my first goal by going to thelavaflow.com/support. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.